Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Nalbandian. I am the coordinator for ISAR 2022. That's the ISAR conference that happens generally every 4 years that has been interrupted due to worldwide events that we've all been experiencing. The conference is August 24th through August 29th, and it'll be in Westminster, Colorado, which is right in between Boulder and Denver. So the beautiful Colorado mountains and the Rocky Mountains and the beautiful area surrounding it. It's going to be lovely. It's going to be August. And today I'm talking with my friend and colleague.
Oh, yeah, both. God, we've known each other like a long time,
A
like
very, very long.
30 years.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
long. I was
yeah,
just I was just a little kid then. No.
yeah, me too. Actually, I'm having my second round as being a kid now. I'm really excited about this conference coming up, not just because it's the first one the first major international conference in a while, but I love that area. Westminster is a place I've spent some time. It's going to be a lot of fun, and knowing that you're coordinating it makes me feel good because you do such a great job coordinating
Oh, thank
conferences.
you. Well, you answered kind of my first question, but if you'd like to elaborate, my first question is this: what does it mean to you personally to come back to an in-person gathering?
Well, for anyone who's listening who knows anything about astrology, I have a fairly close conjunction of the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and the North Node all in the 11th house, which is the house associated with collective community groups. And if I could, well, not true anymore, but for many decades of my life, I thought if I could live at a conference, that would be my ideal, situation. We as astrologers have an amazing community. Those of us who have been in the community know how amazing it is. Those who have never been to a conference like this, when they stumble into their first conference, whatever it might be, they go, "Oh my God, I had no idea there was such a community." And so, I mean, we've been blessed because of technology. We haven't been as isolated as we might have been had this been 20 or 30 years ago. But there's something about seeing someone, looking at them nose to nose, holding their hand, or even giving a hug. If that's legal, masked or unmasked, I don't know. All I know is that I'm excited about being back in the community. And on top of that, I've been through the program. I'm really excited about the talks. There's a lot of really interesting talks given by people who I respect and really know their work. And yet it really seems like people are doing some interesting things.
And the thing is, there's 100 speakers, so there's a lot of material suitable for anyone in their particular interest in astrology.
Yeah.
The beauty of a conference from an intellectual point of view is you've got a smorgasbord in front of you. You can try out techniques and thoughts and ideas and methods in astrology that you might not have had before, and you can hear some of your favorite speakers and new speakers doing them. But let's talk about what you're doing, because on Monday, August 29th, there's a workshop, and we'll get to your regular lecture in a minute. But you're
Yeah.
doing a workshop on the 29th, and it's called The Role in the Outer Planets in Natal Chart Interpretation and Forecasting. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this is it doesn't matter how much astrology we know technically. When you're actually working with clients, there's a different thing that happens.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who it was that said, in theory and practice are the same, but in practice they're not.
I'm not.
It's brilliant. And so I'm assuming that most everyone who attends a conference like this has some smattering knowledge of astrology. There'll be many professionals there. This is a workshop that is hands-on, that is basically less, well, there'll be some techniques, but it's more about what happens when you're in the trenches and how do you integrate the fact that a person is having Jupiter conjuncting one thing and Saturn conjuncting another, and in is sweeping Uranus, and Pluto has been there for years. How do you take all this information and turn it into a story? And how do you do that with the client's help? We'll actually do at least 2 or 3 charts of people in the classroom, real time, live. I will look at them for the first time with the rest of the class, integrating some of the techniques of how do you take, I mean, Jupiter and Saturn, for example, are really opposite energies. I mean, we can do that with many planets. But how do you work with these things that say, you're short, you're tall? Well, which are you? And so in a way, we'll work with these, not only the social planets, the regulators of Jupiter and Saturn, but once we get out into what we used to call the transpersonal planets, but they're really more than that because we integrate them. Let me put it this way. Anyone who's ever had a transit of Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, conjunct or square or opposed their sun or the moon, knows that these are not transpersonal planets. They are personal. We personalize them. And again, how do we work with these energies? How do we avoid falling into the trap of going, oh my God, Pluto's coming up to, because often it's the fear of the fall that actually determines our fate, not the fall itself.
Exactly.
And so that's kind of my approach. It'll be a hands-on approach, nuts and bolts astrology in the trenches. But I can guarantee that I don't care how long you've been doing astrology, you'll come away with some nuggets and some things that you never quite thought about. My approach, as you know, Laura, is a bit eclectic, although very grounded.
It is. And people come away with a lot of information from your classes and workshops. So those of you who really want to get into some, as Rick has already said, nuts and bolts of dealing with the outer planets in the natal chart and the forecasting, this is your workshop. Now on Sunday, on the Sunday prior to that, on August 28th,
yes,
mid-morning, you will be doing a lecture called The Future of Astrology. Sounds interesting. The disintegration of the boundary between physical and metaphysical reality. Now, only somebody like you, only you could come up with that. So tell me, what is that?
Well, I think this is really important. And I think there's something going on that I've not heard a lot of people talk about unto itself. I actually think that we as a species are vibrating ourselves out of the physical and into the metaphysical realms. I think it's longer than a generation or 2 or 3 or 5 for that matter. But I believe, I shouldn't say I believe, it's obvious that planets change their archetypal sensibilities as we change our sensibilities. I think a good example of this is Liz Green's infamous first astrology book on Saturn, A New Look at an Old Devil. Because in that book, she introduced the concept that Saturn wasn't just this thing that camped out in your chart and ruined everything for a year or so at a time, that in fact it was part of a Jungian internal archetype that if we engaged and worked with, had important lessons and things that we could do to improve our life. Here I am talking to you, the Saturnian Capricornian, who is, I think, as wonderful an example. I use you as an example of a Saturn that I don't have. But, but when you don't have something, you learn how to work with it, or you kind of, but here's the thing. Liz's book doesn't catch it all anymore, because when we were in school, you and I, us older folk, and I older than you, we learned, for example, that there were 2 types of literature. There was 2 types of books, fiction and nonfiction. Well, it's my contention now that there's a 3rd type that is actually larger than either of the other 2. And it's something in between. Is it fact or is it fiction? I mean, I'm talking UFOs, reincarnation, astrology, even. I mean, it's real, but it's not the same type of real as Saturn used to be. You see, Saturn was once a wall. It was an absolute impenetrable wall, and there was nothing outside of Saturn, nothing. The fixed stars that did not move. And when Uranus was discovered, we moderners can't imagine how that blew people's minds,
Oh,
because the local real estate just tripled, you know. Well, it's my contention that Saturn is no longer the king of determining what's here, what's there, what's alive, what's not alive. We have a whole universe of disincarnate consciousness that people are coming into contact with, whether it's through spirit guides or ancestors that come through indigenous cultures, or whether it's psychic mediums or aliens or ghosts or goblins. And all of these things are part of a larger shift where the trans-Saturnian planets are in fact real. You see, Buckminster Fuller said that in the 20th century, 99% of all scientific investigation occurred in areas of the universe that were invisible. Think about that.
yeah.
You see, and so our whole world has shifted, and we don't think about it. We don't know. We don't know about it because environments are invisible. Our environment changes. We just go, oh, now this, now that. Oh, we now have, computers in our hand that do more than a warehouse of computers could have done, 60 years ago, whatever. So this is not a talk about the technology of the future of astrology. I've given talks like that. I love talks like that. This is more about how do we work with this new environment that is not the same as an ancient environment. I mean, even from the standpoint of, you look at old books, the whole thing about learning astrology is how to delineate a chart. No modern counseling astrologer delineates a chart anymore. That is, your sun is here, it's trine that, it's in the third house, your moon is here, it's sextile that, we don't do that. We use the chart as an intermediary to basically engage with the client and to help them improve their own lives. I mean, everybody has a slightly different take on it. So basically, my talk is about this shift from physical into metaphysical. And normally reality goes the other way. Normally meta becomes physical. That's how consciousness works. You change your thoughts, your reality changes. I mean, there's enough technology or new age thoughts on that. I don't have to go through that. But I'm talking about it from the other way around. I'm talking about how we are all more metaphysical than our parents, our grandparents, their great grandparents, and so on, because of something that is very important. And what does this mean for a practicing astrologer?
Well, it is thought-provoking as usual, Rick, and I look forward to it. And as long as my brain hasn't exploded by that time during the conference, making it happen, then you're always thought-provoking for me. There's a few of you out there, and you're one of them.
Well, I tell you what, and that is that after the conference, a month later, 3 months later, we can have this conversation over dinner.
There you go. Let's do it.
Because we are a part of that community, and it's a privilege to be your friend and to participate in the same events. I've said many times, one of the reasons why I like hearing you talk is you blow my mind with how interesting, boring, practical things can be. No, I mean, you say things in ways that it's like, that's anyhow. I mean, this isn't about you. This is about me. But I appreciate you too.
You digress. Well, my friend, I'm so looking forward. We'll see each other in May, and then we'll see each other in August. And I will count my